What happens when a driver who's gone 238 races with 0 podiums finally gets one? A fluke? A charity result? Well, not if that driver is Nico Hulkenberg. But why exactly did it take him so long to reach the podium anyway? Well, today, we'll find out. Born in 1987 to a family of industrial shippers, young Nico wasn't really groomed from birth to be a racing driver. I mean, Hulkenberg didn't even sit in a go-kart until he was 10 years old. His early mentor was Willy Webber, the same man who had discovered Michael Schumacher, and he immediately spotted something special. He even gave him a nickname that would stick for life, the Hulk. It was not just a play on his surname, but a nod to the transformation he underwent behind the wheel. The karting years flew by in a blur of victories. Multiple national titles fell to the young German, each one building towards something bigger. In his very first season of single-seater racing driving Formula BMW, Nico absolutely dominated. At just 19 years old, Nico single-handedly led A1 Team Germany to the 2006 championship, claiming astonishing 9 victories in his rookie season. But actually, Hulkenberg was just getting started. The pinnacle of his junior career arrived in 2009 when he stepped up to GP2, the final stepping stone before Formula 1. Driving for the ART Grand Prix team, Nico delivered a sensational rookie campaign. He won the GP2 Series Championship in his debut season, joining an elite club of drivers who clinched the championship on their first try. Formula 1 teams began circling like sharks, each one hoping to secure the signature of motorsport's hottest property. But as Nico would soon learn, that talent alone doesn't guarantee success in Formula 1. The sport he was about to enter was a different beast entirely, one where politics, money, and timing could matter just as much as pure pace. Still, when Williams offered him a race seat for 2010, the future looked impossibly bright. How could it not? This was a driver who had never failed to win a championship in any series he'd competed in. Surely Formula 1 would be just another step on an inevitable march to greatness.
Well, being a Formula 1 driver this year, 2010, is a great feeling.
The Williams FW32 that awaited Hulkenberg for his rookie season wasn't exactly a championship contender, but it was a solid midfield car. Partner with veteran Rubens Barrichello, Nico had the perfect mentor to guide him through his early F1 education. Throughout the 2010 season, there were flashes of the brilliance that had made him such a dominant force in junior categories. However, in the penultimate race, something insane happened. November 6, 2010, the Brazilian Grand Prix at Interlagos. Saturday qualifying in Sao Paulo was a lottery with rain and track conditions changing by the minute, but Hulkenberg seemed to be operating on a different level entirely. When the track began to dry in the final moments of Q3, most drivers were still circulating on intermediate tires, waiting for conditions to improve further. But Hulkenberg made the bold decision to switch back to slicks. It was a massive gamble. But all of a sudden, Nico was painting sector after sector purple, absolutely flying on track. When he crossed the line, the time was almost too good to be true. He grabbed a pole position by nearly a full second. At a wet Interlagos, on a drying track against the likes of Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber in their dominant Red Bulls, a rookie in a Williams had somehow found a way to be the fastest of all. However, race day didn't quite deliver the fairy tale ending that the pole position had promised. Starting from the front, Hulkenberg was always going to be vulnerable to cars with superior pace as the race settled down. He slipped back through the field, eventually finishing a respectable 8th. But still, the entire F1 paddock now knew Nico Hulkenberg's name, and more importantly, they knew he had the talent to belong at the highest level. Despite his sensational debut season, Hulkenberg found himself without a race seat for 2011. Williams, struggling financially like many teams in that era, made the painful decision to replace their talented rookie with Pastor Maldonado, a driver whose significant sponsorship backing proved too tempting to ignore. Nico, meanwhile, accepted a role as Force India's reserve driver for 2011. I mean, it wasn't what he'd hoped for after his breakthrough season, but it kept him in the paddock, and his chance for a comeback came sooner than anyone expected.
Pretty busy already, January, the break was over after New Year.
After a year of simulator work, Nico found himself an actual racing seat with Force India for 2012. Hulkenberg immediately picked up where he'd left off with Williams. His speed that season was undeniable, but what happened at the season finale in Brazil would haunt him for years to come. Yes, it was the same track he claimed that pole position 2 years ago, once again giving him nightmares. When the heavens opened, most drivers struggled to find grip. Hulkenberg and his teammate Jenson Button made the inspired call to switch to slick tires early. Nico committed to the same gamble once again. For more than 30 laps, Hulkenberg led the Brazilian Grand Prix, but as the laps ticked by, the track continued to dry and the pace advantage that had propelled Hulkenberg to the front began to evaporate. Faster cars on fresher tires were closing in, and the most dangerous of them all was Lewis Hamilton in his McLaren. With just 16 laps remaining, Hamilton had close to within striking distance, ultimately securing an overtake. However, approaching the Desira do Lago corner with lap traffic, Hulkenberg made his move to reclaim the lead from Hamilton. It was a brave attempt, but as Nico lunged for the inside line, he locked up the tires. Hamilton's McLaren and Hulkenberg's Force India tangled in a cloud of carbon fiber parts. Hamilton was out on the spot. Hulkenberg's car was damaged but still mobile, though a penalty for causing the collision dropped him to 5th by the checkered flag. In the space of a single corner, what should have been the greatest victory in Force India's history became another entry in the growing legend of Nico's near misses.
I want to take the next step as a driver and really perform consistently at my best game throughout the year.
The 2013 season brought a change of scenery as Hulkenberg moved to Sauber, but the pattern of brilliant drives falling just short of the ultimate reward continued. His greatest performance that year came at the Korean Grand Prix, where he defended against Lewis Hamilton with surgical precision and held off Fernando Alonso's charging Ferrari lap after lap. Still, when the checkered flag fell, Nico had brought the Sauber home only in 4th place. Superb was how Alonso described Hulkenberg's defensive driving that day. Coming from a 2-time world champion who was notorious for his own defensive skills, it was perhaps the highest praise possible. But once again, just one spot short of a podium. When Hulkenberg returned to Force India for 2014, he found himself partnered with Sergio Perez in what would become one of Formula One's most intriguing teammate battles. On pure pace, there was little to choose between them. Both were highly skilled drivers capable of extracting maximum performance from their machinery. However, there was one crucial difference that would prove psychologically challenging for Nico. Perez had a knack for finding podiums in chaotic races. I mean, take a look at the stats. From 2014 to 2016, Force India scored 4 podium finishes. All 4 went to Perez, none to Hulkenberg. And by the way, I've made an entire video on Perez, you should check it out. And if you like this video so far, don't forget to subscribe. I'm trying to break through the 30,000 subscriber mark, and we've never been closer. It wasn't that Nico was slower in many races, he was actually ahead of his Mexican teammate on pace, but Formula One podiums often come down to being in the right place when carnage unfolds, and somehow the racing gods always seem to smile on Perez rather than Hulkenberg. Monaco 2016 provided perhaps the most painful example of this dynamic. Hulkenberg was running strongly in the points when a safety car bunched up the field and opened a window for a strategic gamble. The Force India pit wall had a choice to make about tire strategy, and when the dust settled, it was Perez who had benefited from the timing, leapfrogging ahead to claim a podium, while Nico was left with another missed opportunity. Hulkenberg had remarkable consistency across finishing positions, though. By the end of 2016, he had finished in every position from 4th down to 10th at least once. But by 2017, Hulkenberg was ready to break this curse.
Jamen, han prøver på yderbanen.
Once again, most unsportive driver.
Set my balls, man.
Yeah, you're really good, man. Keep doing so.
The move to Renault made perfect sense on paper. Here was a manufacturer team with championship heritage plus significant resources looking to rebuild their F1 program after years in the wilderness. Hulkenberg would be their lead driver, the experienced hand to guide their development while also fulfilling his own ambitions. The early signs at Renault were encouraging. He consistently outpaced his teammates, first Jolyon Palmer, then Carlos Sainz Jr. But the big breakthrough continued to prove elusive. There were moments of promise, like Azerbaijan 2017, where Nico was running in podium contention before clipping a wall in tricky crosswinds, or Austria, where a reliability issue messed up the car just as chaos was unfolding ahead of him. Each time, it seemed like the racing gods had a new way to deny Hulkenberg his moment in the sun. In 2018, Hulkenberg continued as Renault's main man, and the team made clear progress compared to 2017, firmly establishing themselves at the head of the midfield pack. Hulkenberg delivered solid results, regularly scoring points. That year, he finished best of the rest in the driver's standings, 7th overall, ahead of his teammate. But despite his personal performance, Renault still lacked the final step in outright pace to challenge the likes of Red Bull, let alone Mercedes or Ferrari. So once again, Hulkenberg found himself locked in a cycle of steady improvement, but no champagne celebrations.
Nico Hulkenberg. Nico Hulkenberg.
As 2019 dawned, Nico found himself approaching an unwanted milestone. The previous record for most Grand Prix starts without a podium belonged to Adrian Sutil, who had managed 128 races without a top 3 finish. Hulkenberg had already surpassed that mark, and with each passing race he was extending a record that no driver wanted to hold. The most heartbreaking near miss of the Renault era, or perhaps even of his entire career, came on home soil at the 2019 German Grand Prix. As the race unfolded, cars spun off the track, and Hulkenberg found himself in an incredible position running second, but the curse wasn't finished with him yet. Navigating a damp corner with the finish line tantalizingly close, Nico's Renault suddenly snapped sideways. The car slid onto the runoff area and slammed into the barrier. Hard to swallow, Nico called it later, and the understatement was almost painful to hear. At the end of the season, Renault announced that they will replace Nico with Esteban Ocon for 2020. When the music stopped at the end of 2019, Hulkenberg found himself without a chair.
So that, was a bit tricky also with the rhythm, but it is what it is for today.
Nico Hulkenberg's Formula One story could have ended there, as a cautionary tale of talent unfulfilled. But the world changed in 2020, and with it came an opportunity that nobody could have predicted. The call came on a Thursday evening in July 2020, just hours before the British Grand Prix weekend was set to begin. Sergio Perez had tested positive for COVID, and Racing Point needed a replacement driver immediately. By the way, Racing Point's RP20 was one of the strongest cars that season, dubbed the Pink Mercedes for its obvious design inspiration and impressive pace. If there was ever a perfect storm for Hulkenberg to finally claim that elusive podium, this seemed to be it. Well, not so fast. Nico's return to the grid lasted exactly 0 meters of racing. On the formation lap, a clutch bolt failure meant his car simply wouldn't move. After more than a year away from F1, after finally getting a chance in a genuinely competitive car, Hulkenberg watched the field disappear into the distance as his Racing Point sat motionless. However, the very next weekend brought another opportunity, as Perez remained sidelined. This time, mercifully, the car actually started, and Hulkenberg reminded the F1 world exactly what they had been missing. When race day arrived, he converted his strong grid position into a solid 7th place finish, earning Driver of the Day honors from fans. Later that season, at the Eiffel Grand Prix, Hulkenberg was called up again. With literally 0 practice laps in the car, he started from the back of the grid and charged through to 8th place. Those 2020 substitute appearances served multiple purposes. They reminded everyone that Hulkenberg still had the pace to compete at the highest level. So when 2022 brought another substitute opportunity with Aston Martin, Nico received the call once again. While the results weren't spectacular, as the Aston Martin was struggling with fundamental balance issues, the Hulk was still in great shape. And one small team noticed that. By the end of 2022, Haas figured out they needed an experienced driver to help develop their struggling car and provide leadership for a team that had been in a free fall. Hulkenberg's contract with Haas was reportedly valued at $2 million, an insane bargain for a driver of this caliber. From the very first race weekend of 2023, Nico established himself as the team's clear number 1. His qualifying performances were particularly impressive, reaching Q3 8 times during the season and extracting speed from the Haas that nobody thought possible. The standout moment came in Montreal, where wet conditions once again brought out the best in Hulkenberg. In a qualifying session, Nico guided Haas to 2nd place on the grid, splitting the front row with world champion Max Verstappen. Yes, a minor grid penalty for a red flag infringement dropped him down the order, but the achievement itself was absolutely extraordinary. By season's end, Hulkenberg had won the qualifying head-to-head against teammate Kevin Magnussen 15-7, often running ahead in races. He finished every race as well, an accomplishment in itself given Haas's reliability issues. I know it's not much, but we'll take it.
Whilst I'm obviously happy and relieved, I'm also a bit tired and look forward to be home, to be honest.
Perhaps more importantly than the results was what Hulkenberg brought to Haas as a team. His technical feedback was invaluable, and team principal Günther Steiner praised how crucial Nico's experience was when he wasn't busy calling Gene. As 2023 progressed, whispers began circulating about Hulkenberg's future. Audi was preparing to enter Formula One as a works manufacturer in 2026, taking over the Sauber team. They would need experienced drivers to guide them through the transition, and Nico's name was increasingly mentioned as a perfect fit. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. He was basically returning to Sauber, the team where he had delivered some of his finest drives over a decade earlier. So when the announcement came that Hulkenberg would indeed be joining Sauber for 2025, nobody was surprised.
Are they
Haas. Who are they? I never heard about them.
There's just this other little American team, you know.
There's an American team?
I think so, yeah.
The 2025 season began with genuine optimism around the Sauber camp. Over the winter, the Swiss team had made significant strides with their car development. The C44, powered by Ferrari, emerged as a solid midfield contender. I mean, that's not bad for a team whose wheel bolts would tear to shreds every pit stop last season. Still, technical analysis revealed the C45 was statistically the slowest car across the 2025 season, averaging 1.7% off the pace, roughly 1.4 seconds around a typical lap. The car suffered from excess understeer and not enough downforce, making it extremely sensitive to turbulent air and difficult to drive in other than perfect conditions. The breakthrough came at the Spanish Grand Prix with a comprehensive upgrade package focusing on aerodynamic improvements. The team introduced an all-new floor, revised side pods with altered rolled bathtub edges, and front wing modifications. The upgrade's impact was immediate. Hulkenberg achieved 5th place in Barcelona, beating Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari in the process. This marked Sauber's first top 5 finish in 3 years and demonstrated the car could now challenge for points on merit rather than relying solely on chaos. The momentum continued with their first double points finish of 2025 in Austria, where Bortoleto scored his first F1 points with 8th place while Hulkenberg finished 9th. Team principal Jonathan Wheely confirmed another major upgrade was planned for later in the season, suggesting the Spanish package was just the beginning of Sauber's technical recovery under new ownership and management. By the time the F1 circus arrived at Silverstone, Sauber boys seemed to be doing alright, but by that point, Nico had extended his sad record to 238 Grand Prix starts without a podium. Saturday qualifying once again delivered a technical issue with the car and saw Hulkenberg eliminated in Q1. But when the lights went out on Sunday, Hulkenberg carved through the chaos of turn 1 like a surgeon, and as rain intensified, Nico's experience in changeable conditions became invaluable. The key moment came mid-race when Sauber made the inspired call to switch to intermediate tires at exactly the right moment. Suddenly, the Sauber that had started last was running in the points, then the top 10, then fighting for a podium position. With 15 laps remaining, Nico Hulkenberg was running 3rd. When Hamilton pitted for fresh slick tires 1 lap earlier, it looked like the opportunity might slip away again. But Sauber's decision to wait that extra lap proved inspired. When Hulkenberg emerged from his final pit stop, he had a crucial 10-second gap over Hamilton, enough of a buffer to manage the gap to the finish. Those final laps were probably the longest of Hulkenberg's life. 16 years of frustration, 238 races of disappointment, a decade and a half of what-ifs, and as the checkered flag finally waved, Nico Hulkenberg finally achieved what had eluded him for so long. Standing on the Silverstone podium, trophy in hand, Nico Hulkenberg had proven that perseverance pays off, that talent will eventually be rewarded, and that sometimes the best stories are those that take the longest to unfold. The Hulk had finally smashed through the barrier that had contained him for so long. In doing so, he had humbled an entire sport that had written him off as yesterday's man. Will we see another podium from him this year? Or this was it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.